I think I messed up. Wait, I'm sure I did. Welcome to Young Elder TV, where UFOs, religions, Anunnaki, and black youth collide in a cosmic comedy. Meet Marcus, our fearless leader. He's an aspiring scientist and part-time alien enthusiast. Then there's Maya, his sister, a no-nonsense lawyer who secretly believes in ancient astronauts. Oh, and don't forget Grandma Pearl. She swears she had tea with an alien once. And finally, their quirky neighbor, Mr. Thompson, convinced he's a reincarnated god. With 3 million fans already hooked, Young Elder TV blends laughs with galactic mysteries. Ready to join the fun? Hit that subscribe button and dive into the cosmic chaos. Young Elder TV, where the stars align for comedy. Out of reach. All right, Young Elder gang, if you're just now tuning in, hit that like button and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is part 2, if you haven't watched part 1. Be sure to go watch part 1 just below this video on the video side. Okay, where were we? On this flight, the craft Nibiru had to first pass by the planet EA, which means he whose house is water, and is now called Neptune, as it did many times before. The planet EA Neptune is a twin planet to the planet Anu Uranus. By twin planet, I mean that Neptune is very similar and in some aspects identical to the planet Uranus. The planet Uranus was originally called Kakab-Shanama, the planet which is the double. Uranus is also influenced by the gravity of Neptune. The gases that make up the atmospheres of Neptune and Uranus are exactly the same. The sizes of Neptune and Uranus are similar. Their colors are identical and their rotational times are similar. Uranus's being 17 hours in Earth time and Neptune's being 16.5 hours. The planet Uranus practically rotates laying down, so the size, if looked at from the wrong angle, can surely be mistaken. Uranus tilts at the extreme angle of 98 degrees. You could almost say that the planet lies on its side as it travels around the Sun. This means that the north and south polar regions of Uranus experience alternate periods of day and shadow hour and summer and winter, each of which is up to 42 Earth years long. The temperature of this planet Uranus on the side that is hidden from this Sun is the same as on the side facing this Sun. As Nibiru came nearer to Neptune, its gravitational pull caused electrical storms on that planet on that Friday afternoon at 1300 hours of Earth time, some 24 billion years ago of Earth time, and caused Nibiru to go slightly off its orbit. As the craft Nibiru passed by Ea Neptune, the planet Anu Uranus came from behind the planet Neptune, and it caused the appearance of a bulge. And that bulge pulled on Nibiru's orbit, and caused the great ship Nibiru to begin to wallop in its orbit from fear of crashing. This happened because the planet Uranus was not originally seen in the solar system when Nibiru made its first visits. Uranus's moving from behind Neptune caused Nibiru to veer off its own original path in order not to hit Uranus, and made it collide into another planet then called Maldek, also called Valkun. The original name for the planet Valkun is Maldek. Maldek was between Lama Mars and Kishar Jupiter. Maldek was 27,500 miles in diameter. Maldek had a population of billions living under the seas in the sub-cities of Kana, which was occupied by the Maldekians, and Vadur, which was occupied by the Troglodytes. Maldek also had 2 moons. This was the planet of Masmukia, or Troglodytes, Dragons, and Voltex. The Troglodytes' average height is 3.5 to 4.5 feet, and their heads are extremely large. These were the slaves. However, the rulers, the Maldekians, were very large in size, from 7 to 9 feet in height, scales of multiple colors, in which they shed like all other reptilians. They lay eggs for reproduction. The troglodytes have 2 round eyes without pupils and no ears or protruding noses, just 2 small holes in the nose area. Their mouths are slits without lips. The troglodytes are hairless and have no teeth. The troglodytes' hands have 4 webbed fingers and no thumbs. The troglodytes live totally underwater in great cities with many great biologists. Because they lived underwater, if the planet sped up, it wouldn't affect them, because gravity is different underwater, meaning gravity is the force that the Earth exerts on an object. The force of gravity is relatively constant all over the surface of the Earth, except for in a few places like the equator, and varies slightly at different altitudes. Many people think, for instance, if a steel ball was dropped from a building and a cotton ball, that the steel ball would fall a lot faster, when the cotton ball only lagged slightly behind. So, the force was still constant. Water is denser than air, so objects move slower through water than air. The impact of the crash affected the beings on the surface of the planet of Maldek and not underneath the water because water is more denser and would slow down the object. So the impact would be less damaging and the shock of the impact would be less severe. However, it was daylight, so most of the beings came on land. All of the beings that could have negotiated were dead due to the crash. The only beings that survived were the ones under the seas, which were the military and the warriors, who were looking for a chance to fight anyway. Nibiru had no way of contacting the beings on the planet Maldek to let them know that it was an accident and not a deliberate attack. Telepathic communication was forbidden to prevent interference by other telepathic, disagreeable beings. This was because the Maldekians were not a part of the Interplanetary Confederation. Their star fleet of warriors, a group of reptilians who bore the symbol of a reptile who called themselves Ninga, meaning warrior, launched an attack. Thinking that the planet Maldek had been attacked, 4 fighter ships of Ninga fleet launched out, and it went off its orbit into the universe, attacked with the intentions of destroying Nibiru. These 4 ships, equipped with high explosives created of plutonium from Maldek's star fleet called Ninga, managed to escape Maldek as Nibiru passed by and followed in Nibiru's path. Nibiru put up its 4 magnetic force fields, which were created by Anu and given to Marduk, and destabilized the 4 attacking ships. Nibiru created the magnetic cube called Kaaba. These 4 great ships called the Ninga fleet moved on as 4 powerful winds that were trapped by Nibiru's force field and unable to break loose. Maldek is now referred to as the Lost Planet. The 4 fighter ships of the Ninga fleet are called the North Wind, South Wind, East Wind, and West Wind. These 4 fighter ships that originally surrounded Nibiru and appeared to launch an attack were now trapped. The great ship Nibiru activated its 4 magnetic force fields, incapacitating these ships. All of their controls and equipment ceased to function. A force field was put up, and they were trapped in the environment of Nibiru. Its new wobbly satellites were caught in Nibiru's gravitational pull and began to circle, making 4 whirlwinds. Nibiru immediately launched 2 ships to return to Ilion to inform the elders of the incident in case of the need for assistance. Nibiru proceeded to move counterclockwise from the planets in this solar system. Nibiru pulled in towards Anshar, which means foremost of the heavens, now called Saturn, and its force field kissed off the planet, and its gravitational pull caused Nibiru to veer off its own orbit, and 3 satellites were added to Nibiru's force field called Evil Wind, Whirlwind, and Matchless Wind. The orbit that Nibiru was originally on was a 25,920-year orbit called AAMS. It shifted into a new orbit of 3,600 years called Ashar. Its orbit was caught in this solar system, always to make a return. Then Nibiru bounced off the planet Rum Titan, which now surrounds Anshar Saturn, and sped up its motion, creating the Saturn rings referred to as the Necklace of Saturn. Plus, at this point, Gaga Pluto was released from its natural orbit around the Sun and was pulled away in the direction of Lamu/Mars and Lahamu/Venus. The path of Nibiru was now bent even more towards the center of the solar system, directly towards Tiamat, which means Maiden of Life, now called Earth. As it moved into your solar system, Nibiru caused problems amongst the other planets in this solar system by pulling their moons. Nibiru, making one complete spin, threw the winds off into space. The approach of Nibiru began to disturb Tiamat, and this alarmed the beings of Tiamat that something was entering their atmosphere, causing volcanic eruptions, storms, hurricanes, and floods. Tiamat was forced to launch 11 ships headed directly for this bright gleaming, or what appeared to be a planet entering its airspace. It was Nibiru. This star fleet of 11 ships from Tiamat was led by Kingu, the great emissary, which was once ruled by the Maldekian deity Lima. The great ship Nibiru had 7 warships accompanying her, and they were launched at the 11 ships that were launched from Tiamat. Kingu was the name of the head defense force of Tiamat, and it later became the name of an imperfect planet now called a moon, one of many moons which was originally the companion planet of Tiamat before the crash of the satellites of Nibiru. The 11 ships which were launched from Tiamat at Nibiru were immediately detected by the force field of Nibiru and eliminated. One of the 4 satellites that came with Nibiru from Maldek, called the North Wind, was lined directly for Tiamat. The impact of the North Wind caused Tiamat to split into 2 parts because of the high explosives that the ship contained, called plutonium. The hole which the North Wind bore in Tiamat caused the upper half of Tiamat to wallop in its orbit, setting large portions of it on fire. The North Wind then came back around, shattering that half into pieces, making comets, of which Halley's Comet is one, and asteroids. Comet coming from the Greek comets, long-haired star from home, hair. The length of time a comet takes to complete its orbit is known as its period. Some comets have periods of less than 7 years. Comets are considered a part of the solar system since they never leave the limits of the same system. The comet's tail always points away from the sun due to the pressure of the sun's light on the dust particles and is usually 5,000 miles in length. Comets are often caught by a planet's gravitational pull which causes them to shift from their course. Many of the pieces of the comet that caught on fire formed the asteroid belt that is in the center of this solar system. The East Wind, another tremendous ship from Maldek, coming with Nibiru from Maldek, swung around and put a hole straight through the upper half of the planet. The planet Tiamat had turbulence and was unstable, while other planets nearby were still wobbling in their orbits. Tiamat was pulled in many directions, on one side by the 2 larger planets, Lamu, now called Mars, and Kishar, foremost of the firmlands, Jupiter on one side, and the 2 smaller planets, Lahamu, Venus, and Mumu, one who was Bomb, Mercury on its other side, all pulling and tugging. Nibiru's 7 ships broke off into 2 separate fleets, the first 4 circling the planet Tiamat, which is now called Chi, creating a net-like web which was a magnetic field. One of the 3 warships from the second part of the fleet of 7 from Nibiru, located on the outskirts of the force fields, then launched a bright flame of light much like ball lightning. The ball lightning was filled with brilliance, and it pierced straight down into Tiamat, completely neutralizing Tiamat's electric and magnetic force fields. A portion of this massive ball of light, which was launched by one of the 3 warships from Nibiru, was called the West Wind, and also known as the Evil Wind, tore straight down as ball lightning into the center, exploded and gauged out a large hollow space in the center of Tiamat. And the West Wind became a tremendous 600-mile diameter sun called Sul, and was trapped in place there with a sunscreen to direct the heat waves through the North Pole away from the planet, creating the northern lights, or what is called aurora borealis, which are solar flares or sun flares. This ball of light, now in the center of Tiamat, was named Afsu, meaning one who exists from the beginning, and the place was named Ishara. 3 satellites launched off of Nibiru, creating a tetrahedron, 4-sided force field of energy at a 19.5 degree angle around the new half of Tiamat, with the hole through it, and a smaller sun, Sul, also called Apsu, was placed inside Tiamat's center. Now this newly formed planet, Tiamat, called Chi, New Earth, was trapped in its orbit, where no planet had been orbiting before, protected by forces, by the guidance of these ships while she healed herself. This 600-mile diameter sun called Sul, Afsu, traveled through the great hole called the Abyss for a distance of 3,963 miles to the center of the half of the planet Tiamat, which the west wind bore a hole through called Chi, pronounced Ki, now called Earth from the word Eridu. So, it was indeed one of the satellites of Nibiru called Winds from Maldek that crashed into Tiamat and not Nibiru itself. The Voltex troglodyte that manned this ship that crashed survived and thrived in the seas of this new planet called Chi or Gaia, even Ge, once called Tiamat, which much later became known as Earth from Eridu, starting the restoration or reconstruction of life on Earth, including evolutionary processes of plant and animal life. Now, the last of the winds, the south wind, crashed into Chi and created the Grand Canyon, and gave birth to another small planet in its own orbit, and rotation around this newly formed planet, Chi, which became the moon that you see today, creating a lunar orbit called Sheshki, meaning celestial deity who protects Earth Chi, and called Kingu, which had become chief among them, ruled by Luna, which Marduk Nibiru made shrink as a Dogai mass of lifeless clay and thrown into outer space to wobble in its own orbit. Deprived of its orbital momentum, Kingu was reduced to the status of a mere satellite. A moon, today known as Ceres, which is today known as the largest of the minor planets and/or asteroids. The upper half of the planet, Tiamat, which became oval-shaped after the moon had broken away, was now 7,926 miles in diameter and 24,896 miles in circumference, and it was set for replenishing or restoration on the part of the great star fleet responsible for its damage. The newly formed planet, Chi, was trapped in its orbit, protected by forces sent from the guidance of 4 ships that were a part of the 11 from the fleet from Nibiru, of which 2 returned back to Ilyun to inform them of what had been happening. Now, this new planet has 2 suns, one in its belly, 3,963 miles from its surface, creating an inner tropical environment, and the other sun, Shamesh, was 93 million miles away from Chi's surface. Chi was now trapped in its new orbit around the outer sun, Shamish, to create a year of 365 days. Thus, a new time zone was created for this new planet. The south wind, crashing into Tiamat, also created a black dust cloud that cut off Earth from the sun. So now you have 2 sets of planets separated by this asteroid belt, creating the inner and outer planets. The inner planets were Mummu, Mercury, Lahamu, Venus, Qi, Earth, Sheshkai, Moon, and Lamu, Mars. The outer planets were Kishar, Jupiter, Anshar, Saturn, whose planet is Rum, Titan, Anu, Uranus, Ea, Neptune, and now USMI, Pluto, previously called Gaga, separated by this asteroid belt, and the remains of the lost planet, Maldek. So, one half of the original Tiamat is an asteroid belt, and the other half is presently your planet called Chi, Earth. These great motherships, or space cities called crystal cities, have, in most cases, 12 levels or floors. It has 12 huge gates, each carved from one solid pearl. One of these cities is mentioned by John in the Book of Revelation, chapter 21. John was taken up to the city. One of these cities was placed over the hole at the North Pole to keep your planet from exploding. The Anunnaki did this. After Nibiru caused Chi, Earth poles to shift. It is parked in the 5th dimension. It was put there as a promise to the true seed of Earth, the rainbow in the sky. The crystal cities are equipped with the same technology as the mothership Nibiru, plus major upgrades were added from the latest developments at Risk Tech. The crystal cities are aerodynamically and astrodynamically nano-engineered in one piece, utilizing piezoelectric quasi-crystal metamaterials that are fabricated within an energy matrix and solidified as an aware living crystal. The pilot of the craft symbiotically interfaces with the craft telekinetically to control the navigation systems. The photonic circuits of the craft are charged from the movement of the piezoelectric crystal shell, which cycles energy into movement and movement into energy, creating a perpetually permeating ambient electromagnetic energy field which sustains the power systems of the craft. While stationary, the craft vibrates at resonant frequency, and when it begins to move, it vibrates at different tones, which in turn create halos of interwoven rainbows around the craft. Like we said, the crystal ships were witnessed by John of Patmos, and he called it New Jerusalem, Jerusalem, Peace to Haru, the crystal city that will descend from heaven in the Book of Revelations. The crystal cities utilize a thing called piezoelectricity. Piezoelectricity is the electric charge that accumulates in certain solid materials, such as crystals, certain ceramics, and biological matter, such as bone, DNA, and various proteins, in response to applied mechanical stress. The word piezoelectricity means electricity resulting from pressure and latent heat. We can find other examples of piezoelectric materials in our everyday life, such as in microphones, speakers, and headphones, which transform the electric waves into vibrations and these into sound or vice versa. Don't forget that magnetism is implemented here. The word piezoelectric is derived from the Greek pietzein, which means to squeeze or press, and piezo, which is Greek for push. Piezoelectric devices are used as actuators in a variety of situations because they can convert electrical energy into mechanical energy via the inverse piezoelectric effect. Piezoelectric actuators are also used in bases that support the primary mirror of large astronomical telescopes used for observing the universe. The piezoelectric effect results from the linear electromechanical interaction between the mechanical and electrical states in crystalline materials with no inversion symmetry. In crystal field theory, CFT, describes the breaking of orbital degeneracy in transition metal complexes due to the presence of ligands. CFT qualitatively describes the strength of the metal-ligand bonds. Based on the strength of the metal-ligand bonds, the energy of the system is altered. This may lead to a change in magnetic properties as well as color. In crystal field theory, it is assumed that the ions are simple point charges, a simplification. When applied to alkali metal ions containing a symmetric sphere of charge, calculations of bond energies are generally quite successful. The approach taken uses classical potential energy equations that take into account the attractive and repulsive interactions between charged particles, that is, Coulomb's law interactions. These are not theory to the Anunnaki, for they have been using this technology for millions of years. We will get more into this on another tape. The crystal cities have Walsall Great and High made of jasper. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 zodiacs of the sun. The city was pure gold, like unto clear glass. The foundations of the wall of the city were garnished with all manner of precious stones. The first foundation is jasper. The first level is for the entry and exit of UFOs and other aircrafts. The second foundation is sapphire. The second level is a vast stockroom of supplies for all the other levels of the ship. The third foundation is chalcedony. The third level is like a zoo, with animals from many different worlds. This level also has the DNA records for 92% of the different species in the galaxy on file. The fourth foundation is an emerald. The fourth level is the agricultural research, farmland, gardens and orchards. The fifth foundation is sardonyx. The fifth level is the housing center for technicians and persons working on the first 4 levels. The sixth foundation is sardius. The sixth level is the recreational level, with vast parks and landscaping. The seventh foundation is chrysolite. The seventh level is the medical complex. The eighth foundation is beryl. The eighth level is housing for evacuees, should that ever be needed. The ninth foundation is topaz. The ninth level is the university compound. On this level are libraries, halls of wisdom, concert halls, and cultural activities. The 10th foundation is chrysoprasus. Level 10 is where the visiting dignitaries from all dimensions come to have meetings and exchange information. The 11th foundation is jacinth. The 11th level is the headquarters for the captains, leaders, officers, and where the great meeting hall is located. The 12th foundation is amethyst. Level 12 is referred to as the dome. It is the pilot control center and officers' observation deck. Visitors are allowed to come here by appointment if they come in a group. The Crystal Cities comes off of the Grand Mothership Nibiru. In this city there is no death. For the beings that manned the Crystal Cities have learned the cure for death. Death is a disease that there is a cure for. There is no sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. The city's light is like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, like we said. Each gate is guarded by an angel or extraterrestrial. These are really 4 ships. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. Down through the center of the mothership is a circular shaft, which is a power reactor for the entire craft. The 12 gates were named after the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, Enki's seed. The cities are 1,500 square miles. Nibiru has many different types of crafts in her belly. In this section we will tell you of the warships and some of the other weapon systems. Nibiru, as we stated before on this trip, had 11 warships. These crafts are equipped with powerful shields. They have hyperspace and FTL engines, and they are armed with a complement of Anunnaki drones. The warships are massive. They can range from 30 feet in diameter to 200 miles in diameter. Some of these warships are motherships themselves, having smaller planes on them. Some Anunnaki technology requires ZPMs. You may ask, what is ZPMs? Well, ZPMs stand for zero-point module. Zero-point energy is the lowest possible energy that a quantum mechanical system may have. Unlike in classical mechanics, quantum systems constantly fluctuate in their lowest energy state, as described by the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Another name for zero-point energy is an element called neutronium. This element sits at the beginning of the periodic table. This element has the atomic number of 0. It sits before hydrogen, which they say has the atomic number of 1. Hydrogen is really not 1. It is -1. Hydrogen starts the left side of the mirror. Constituting approximately 75% of all normal matter, hydrogen is the most abundant chemical substance in the universe. Stars, including the Sun, primarily consist of hydrogen in a plasma state, while on Earth, hydrogen is found in water, organic compounds as dihydrogen, and in other molecular forms. Helium is -2. After hydrogen, helium is the second most abundant element in the universe. It is present in all stars. It was and is still being formed from alpha particle decay of radioactive elements in the Earth. Some of the helium formed escapes into the atmosphere, which contains about 5 parts per million by volume. As you go left, you'll notice that the elements get heavier. As you go to the right, the elements get lighter. So when you go to the right of hydrogen, you go to 0. The 0 point is the origin of all elements on both sides of the mirror. The element that comes before hydrogen, like we said, is neutronium. Neutronium is a substance made entirely of neutrons. Neutronium exists in the cores of neutron stars. When neutron star core material is presumed to consist mostly of free neutrons, it is typically referred to as neutron-degenerate matter. Quantum systems are constantly fluctuating in their lowest energy state, even at absolute 0, causing atoms and molecules to retain some vibrational motion. This energy is also present in the empty space of a vacuum, where it's known as vacuum energy. In physics, a quantum is the minimum amount of any physical entity involved in an interaction. Quantum is a discrete quantity of energy proportional in magnitude to the frequency of the radiation it represents. All this ties in together. I may have cracked your head already and twisted your cap back. I just wanted to give you an overview on quantum physics and zero-point energy, which is neutronium. We will get more into that on the zero-point energy class we got coming out soon. Also, the Asgard Greys extract neutronium from atoms and use it for fuel to power their crafts. Okay, let's get back to the warships. The Anunnaki are shown to be a powerful and more advanced species as they possess huge warships that can take them from one star system to another, plus many other advances including heavy armor, cybernetics, robotics, energy weapons, advanced scanners, and even the ability to disrupt electromagnetic waves. The warships have the best shields available and very thick armor or outer shell. Every warship has shields, which are energy fields that serve as protective barriers. For non-combat ships, shields simply serve to prevent small asteroids from damaging the ship. For larger combat ships, they provide the initial defense against attacks from other ships. Shields are different from armor in that they recharge, albeit slowly, between attacks. The armor or outer shell is a physical form of defense, as opposed to shields, which are an energy barrier. It is the last barrier between your fragile person and any weapons being fired at you. It will, to a point, serve to keep your ship from being destroyed after your shields are breached. Unlike shields, armor does not repair itself. If you depend on armor for survival, you may find yourself at a serious disadvantage to an opponent whose shields are recharging. These warships also have the same technology as Nibiru, such as the hologramic technology. The first weapon system is the EMP weapon. This weapon is one of the most devastating weapon systems in the galaxy, dealing immense damage to shielding. On top of that, it has a wide blast radius. EMP stands for electromagnetic pulse, which is a burst of radio frequency electromagnetic radiation that can be caused by a nuclear explosion or other sources, such as a solar flare. When a nuclear weapon detonates near the Earth's surface or at high altitudes, it can create an EMP that can damage electronic devices over a large area. The extent of the damage depends on the altitude of the burst, with high-altitude bursts potentially creating electric fields that cover an area as large as Nebraska. EMPs can also disrupt and permanently damage electrical components and systems and damage power lines and telecommunications. EMPs can also be created by non-nuclear sources such as electromagnetic bombs nicknamed the E-bombs. An electromagnetic pulse, also referred to as a transient electromagnetic disturbance, is a brief burst of electromagnetic energy. The origin of an EMP can be natural or artificial and can occur as an electromagnetic field, as an electric field, as a magnetic field, or as a conducted electric current. Some of the warships have what we call the Ionic particle weapons. The IPW, or Ionic particle weapon, is a 360 degrees forward-mounted beam gun that causes good damage and large amounts of ionization and is incapable of destroying its target. This quality makes it useful for piracy and capturing ships. Despite the claim of being the most accurate energy weapon in the galaxy, the ion weapon has inaccuracy. This statement may instead be a reference to its ability to disable enemy ships instead of destroying them. In physics and chemistry, ionization energy is the minimum energy required to remove the most loosely bound electron of an isolated gaseous atom, positive ion or molecule. Ionization energy increases moving from left to right on the periodic table, a table of the elements. The energy decreases moving from top to bottom on the periodic table. The warships also have fusion pulse missiles. An FPM, or fusion pulse missile, are hydrogen missiles designed that doesn't require a fission explosive to ignite the fusion of deuterium and tritium. The fusion pulse missile are rather crude yet powerful weapon. The warships also have plasma and laser weapons. A laser is a device that emits light through a process of optical amplification based on the stimulated emission of electromagnetic radiation. The word laser is an acronym that originated as an acronym for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation.